All right, so good morning, everyone. Luke and I are going to be talking about some sensitive topics and mental health and substance abuse. And if anybody feels triggered by any of that from personal experience and you want to step out, feel free. You're not going to offend any of us. My cousin Luke, he stepped out to get some fresh air. He should be back like any moment. Hope everything's all right. Luke, where you been, man?
I was in the parking lot, and I just wake up, and all of a sudden my head is throbbing. All right, what are we doing here? I can't remember a thing. What?
We're here to talk to Miss O'Halloran's class. It's their emotional intelligence unit.
Okay.
We're here to talk to them about WWHW, our stories, give them some insight on how to set goals and really build resilience when it comes to everyday life. Does that ring a bell?
It's starting to come back to me a little. I mean, that sounds pretty good. It sounds like pretty interesting stuff. Why? Why are we doing this?
Because you and I, we love talking about our stories. We love helping others. We love preparing others to make positive change in their life and therefore have a positive impact on the world.
It sounds pretty heroic. It sounds cool. How are we doing this?
Well, first we're going to, break down our stories, our low points. Then we're going to get into how we got out of those low points to where we are today. We're going to break down a WWHW formula, which is a formula for implementing any positive change in your life. And then we're going to talk about references and their significance in building goals and accomplishing them.
Sounds pretty good to me. So, when are we doing this?
We're doing it right now. You're up.
Wait. Right now?
Right now.
So there I was in a pregame, sophomore year of college. About to leave, go out to where we party. But I had the great idea of taking out some cocaine out of my pocket, putting it on the table, putting a nice line for myself. Doing that, all of a sudden I look up, I'm like, oh, nobody else is here. I'm the last person here. With that, about to walk out the door, another spectacular idea. Why don't I get a beer, crack that open on my way out? So, grab my beer, start walking down the steps, get out to the street, and I'm going up the street towards campus, about to go around the corner. And as I turn, all of a sudden I see, boom, there's 3 police officers right in front of me. And all of a sudden, tons of things are going through my mind. I have a bag of cocaine in my pocket, I have a blunt rolled up. I already got in trouble with the police before my freshman year even started at Princeton during football camp. And so all I'm thinking about is, all right, what are the consequences going to be if something happens right now, if they catch me with this stuff? And so officer's like, hey, do you have an ID? I'm like, oh no, I don't have an ID. So he says, all right, go over there with those other 2 officers. And so I take a step towards them, and all of a sudden I go, boom! I just book it. And so back then, I was a Division I football player at Princeton, so I had pretty good speed. Ended up, toasting this cop. And by the time I get away, I'm like, you know what? Why don't I just go get changed? Maybe throw a hat on and just go back out. It sounds like a good idea as well. So I do that, I get changed, I go back out, and I'm out at the party, getting more hammered, getting more messed up. At that point, I'm pretty blacked, but I'm like, I remember we were at this one place where we were partying, and we were going to this other. And you had to get on the list, and I was on the list, so one of my friends was like, oh, I got you, I'm gonna get you in. Little did I know he forgot about me. But I'm waiting on the street, and all of a sudden, as I'm standing there, I see somebody's face that's right in front of me, just of sheer shock. And all of a sudden, I feel this really strong tug on my belt. And I just start trying to book it. And this guy, he's on my belt. And I'm just like, I don't know if you ever played some tackle football when you were younger in the park, but I'm just like swinging him by my hips like this, and he's just swinging around me. And all I can remember is I had this very quick moment in my head, and it was either I can take my hand and just rip through his arm and try to make a break for it, or just put my hands up and say, you know what, I've had enough. And I don't know what it was, but something came over me, and it was at that moment when I was like, all right, that's it. Put my hands up. The cop proceeded to take me down. He rolled me over. He rolled me on top of him, rolled me over, and all I remember is just laying there, my face in the rocks, and I look up, and there's hundreds of my fellow students just staring down at me.
All right, so there I was, right? It was the morning of September 18th, 2021. At this point in my life, I was really struggling with anxiety and depression. I woke up this morning, and my dad and I had the idea of like, come on, John, like let's go to the gym. Let's try to get a workout in and see if you can, escape from your mind for a little bit. So I went to the gym, and instead of finding, peace and feeling good and getting a good workout in, I found myself in an all-out war inside my mind, right? It was as if two sides of my mind were playing tug of war, where the good side was, telling me to keep fighting, and the other side was telling me to give up. And for the first time in my life, I felt the good side starting to lose, right? In that tug of war match, the good side was starting to lose grip of the rope. And I remember being in the gym and just remembering how I was doing these workouts with such intensity because I was just feeling like I was fighting something on the inside of me. Right? We left the gym. I broke down the parking lot on the way to the car. And I told my dad, like, this is the hardest I've ever fought over anything in my entire life. He got home. He said, all right, let me make you a big breakfast. It made me some scrambled eggs, some potatoes, and some biscuits. And I remember him preparing this food for me sitting on my back deck, and just not being able to touch it, not having an ounce of hunger, trying to force feed myself, but to no avail. I just could not eat. I could not stomach the food. And it was in that moment where I told my dad, I was like, listen, like, I don't know how much longer I can deal with these feelings. I don't know how much longer I can deal with these thoughts that I'm having. I think it's time for me to get some serious help. I was experiencing suicidal ideation. So I made the call to my mom, who was away on vacation at the time. And I said, Mom, I think it's time for me to go into the emergency room and really get this situation under control. So that's what we did. My dad and I hopped in the car. We drove 45 minutes south to a hospital in Westchester, in which I admitted myself into an inpatient care facility. Right? I found myself, sitting amongst about 20 other people who were going through similar battles. And I remember just sitting there in the hospital, no contact with the outside, no cell phone, just in complete shock and awe of how I just got to this point in my life, sitting there in an inpatient psychiatric center.
Just giving you a little background information. I remember things started to change for me when I had my first drink. I remember I started drinking when I was 12 years old. And before that, I was like the straight A student, playing 5 sports, and I was super dedicated to classroom, super dedicated to sports. And once I started having that first drink, it wasn't like immediately like, oh my gosh, I just don't care about anything. But it like all of a sudden progressively started to be more about, all right, like, I want to do this stuff on the weekends. I want to just, have a party, have a good time. And my focus started to go more towards that area. By the time I got to high school, that's really all I cared about was, being the class clown, being the center of attention. My grades started to fall. And at that point, I was a cross-country runner, and I was a basketball player. And so for cross-country, I was like top 10 in the nation. I was running like a 4:30 mile. And so that was kind of always my thing. So I was doing all right in that. In basketball, I was on the JV team doing the same deal. Sophomore year comes around. I'm like, you know what? This cross-country thing, man, I want to try something else. I decided, all right, I'm gonna start playing on the football field. I transitioned to playing on the football field. A lot of people are like, what are you doing? This isn't a good idea. You have all these opportunities. Like, all right, let me try it out. And at first, it seemed like they were right because I was a sophomore. I was on the varsity team, but I wasn't getting any burn. So, that wasn't a great start right there. But I was playing varsity basketball, and the partying stuff continued, especially as I was on that varsity team as a sophomore, trying to impress all these older guys. And so that was kind of what was going on. But going into my junior year, I dedicated some time on the field, and that was when I had my breakouts. All state, all section, football, all this stuff. And these were kind of things that I never thought would ever happen to me because I was always a cross-country runner, just kind of like looking at the football field, imagining being on the field. And so all of a sudden, I started having success in the field, and it just started to get to my head because I was like Luke Tin, the clown, the guy that's always just trying to get people's attention by making stupid jokes, making fun of himself, whatever. To all of a sudden being, that guy that people are talking about as like the local star. And so that was my junior year. Same deal with basketball, it was all section. And then going into my senior year, I went to some camps for football. I got a Division I offer at Princeton. I accepted that. And I didn't really do much to train that summer at all. And so kind of going into my senior year, like people around me didn't really know what the expectations were. And so what ended up happening is, probably to get it, but I ended up having probably the best season in New York State football history in New York. I broke 4 state records, most yards in a season, most catches in a game, most catches in a state championship game, all these different records and accolades. And it was like, I was kind of just doing it without really, doing my hardest. I mean, when I was there, I always worked hard, but I wasn't doing the extra things that I should have done. I was focused on partying. I was focused on, smoking weed every second of the day. At that point, I was a full-blown stoner. But it didn't seem to be affecting me in any way, shape, or form. Maybe in the classroom a little bit, but, I had all this success in the field. Who were anybody else to tell me what to do? And so I took that same mentality, I took that ego with me to Princeton University. And that was when reality definitely started to hit, because now I wasn't the guy anymore. Everybody that came to Princeton was the guy. And I was the guy who didn't prepare 1 ounce. I didn't look at the playbook. I didn't condition. I didn't train anything. And right off the bat, told myself I wasn't going to smoke weed. I started like 2 days later, full-blown pothead again. And I ended up getting arrested with the campus police before the football season even started. So right off the bat, I had a terrible reputation with the coaching staff, with the players that really cared about the team and the camaraderie. And winning a championship, those guys wrote me off. But of course, I was the party guy. I was the crazy guy. I was the one, that didn't really care about the important stuff, but had a good time. So some people were attracted to that, and that's what I thrived off of and tried to build my reputation off of. And so I barely got out of freshman year, just skated by like a 1.5. Going to my sophomore year, I had the brilliant idea of quitting the football team because I was going to focus on my grades. And if you were listening to the trajectory I had before, it wasn't really looking like I was going to go in that direction. What do you think, right? It wasn't looking very likely. So what I decided to do was I'm going to join a fraternity because, I don't have a brotherhood in the football team. I'm going to join some other brothers in the Greek life. And so I joined Greek life, and that is when my partying, all of the drug use totally escalated. I went from drinking, partying on the weekends, to all of a sudden it was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, getting hammered every single night, doing cocaine every single night. And that led up to me getting arrested about a week before Halloween.
Yeah, so there I was, right, sitting in an inpatient care facility, wondering how I ended up there. So in those 11 days, I had a lot of time to think, like, how did I actually end up here? And looking back on it, right, I grew up in Poughkeepsie, New York. I attended Spack and Kill High School. While I was at Spack and Kill, I was a straight A student. I was captain of my varsity golf, varsity basketball teams. I was voted the top scholar athlete in all of Dutchess County. I was in the National Honor Society. I was heavily involved in a wide array of extracurricular activities, known amongst my peers and teachers as the student that was going to go on to college and do big things, and nobody had to ever worry about John. Right. My senior year, I got accepted into SUNY Binghamton, into the School of Management, and that's where I continued my studies after I graduated from Spack Hill in 2017. Went to Binghamton, and that reputation held true there as well. I quickly found success in that system where I had close to a 4.0 GPA. I was able to complete my bachelor's degree in 3 years, and then I stayed an extra year and got my 1-year MBA. I was heavily involved in the investment club and the finance society at the university. I worked with a local incubator in an entrepreneurship development course. I was the graduate assistant of a 400-person class. I was the vice president of my fraternity. All this stuff, I was able to balance all of that and still have a very active social life where I met and formed tons of awesome relationships. But that all came to a screeching halt on my last night of college. Me and about 15 of my buddies, we went out to dinner, celebrating, recapping a great 4 years together. The next day, we were all parting ways from Binghamton and moving on to the next chapter of our lives. And it was at this dinner where I was overcome with these really intense physical sensations of a really rapid heartbeat. I felt myself sweating. I thought I was going to pass out. I thought I was having a heart attack. I'd never experienced anything like it before. And what this turned out to be was my first of many panic attacks. So the next day I leave. It completely ruined my last night of college. Instead of enjoying my buddies and going out and having a good time, I found myself, quivered up in my room, really scared and really confused as to what was happening to me. I left the next day, and I brushed it off as maybe a one-time incident, but this turned out to just be the beginning for me, which started a whole summer of a gradual decline in my mental health. So it started with panic attacks, and that soon gradually turned into continuous anxiety. And then in about August of 2021 is when the depression really started to kick in. At this point, my appetite was gone. I was losing weight rapidly. I was always like a physically fit person, and I enjoyed eating. So to me, that was like an extremely foreign concept in my mind. I was experiencing extreme insomnia. At this point, I was sleeping only about 2 hours a night for about 8 weeks straight. I was looking in the mirror. I couldn't even really recognize myself anymore. I was really losing touch with who I was as a person. And in September is when I started experiencing suicidal ideation, and is when I really decided to get help. And that's how I got to my rock bottom.
So we need to change. What did I need to change? What do I want to change? I wanted to change the fact that I had all these dreams and aspirations, and I set all these goals for myself, and I was not working towards any. And externally, for a lot of my life, it may have seemed like, hey, this guy does have it figured out. Like, we were going over the whole thing. Division I football player at Princeton, all these state records, right? Like, it seemed like, oh, this guy's achieving. But yeah, that stuff came from a lot of habits that were ingrained for me from a kid. And luckily I was able to take some of those with me, but a lot of that was just innate talent that I just had. And once that was kind of, I was showing its true colors, and stuff started to come from underneath the surface. Like, okay, that was just natural talent. Now, these other things that I want to do, when I tried to do them, when I tried to go pursue my other goals, it never really happened. So I wanted to become somebody who achieved my goals and actually, became the person that I thought I was going to be. And why did I want to do that? Why? Was because, I knew I wasn't living to my fullest potential. Every day, I remember waking up and I'm like, all right, how am I going to get high? Where am I going to go party? Who am I going to sleep with? Like, that was the constant, thoughts in my mind. At the time, I really thought that was cool. I'm like, all right, this is the way to live. Like, I'm living for the next fun thing. Why? What else is there to really, live for? But just that repetitive thought pattern started to get so tiring. And it just finally got to the point where I was like, dude, look at yourself. Like, you keep telling yourself you're going to do these things, and you're really lying right to your own face. That's what's happening. And so I wanted to, live to my full potential. And how did I do that? Like, how did I begin that change from going to somebody who, had this drug problem and, put all his goals on the back burner and, got kicked out of Princeton and, was losing this opportunity, was I knew that it was either all in on the substances or all out. And listen, I'm not the guy that stands up here and I'm not sponsored by the DARE program. You know what I mean? Like, you guys are in college. I'm not here to say don't do drugs now. But for me, it was either all in or all out. And it proved itself time and time again. 'Cause I'm like, I'm just gonna smoke weed on the weekends. I'm just gonna chill out. During the week, do my thing, and it would be like, all right, like made it a day, made it 2 days, and all of a sudden, once I picked up the blunt, it was right back into that pattern within 48 hours, and that was just a repeated cycle over and over and over and over again. So through my personal experiences, I finally realized, from the time I got kicked out in October, 6 months went by of me trying to get sober, going back and forth, and I finally was like, that's it, I'm done. Throw up the white flag. So I reached out to somebody who I was close with, who I knew was sober, and that person was in AA. And so they actually ended up sponsoring me in AA, and that was when I decided to get sober. April 21st, 2018, it'll be 5 years in a couple weeks. I've been sober ever since. So. Thank you.
So in my scenario, being in an inpatient facility in a hospital, experiencing suicidal ideation, I was basically almost forced to change, right? It was either that or my life was in serious risk. So over those 11 days in that hospital, I had a lot of time to think and reflect on what it is that I really need to change about myself. And what I came to realize is that basically almost the entirety of my life, Right? I was living up to this perception of who John Tim was instead of actually doing and saying and being the person that I wanted to be. I had never even conceptualized that. I had just found so much success in basically doing what people around me expected of me. I was just naturally gifted. I was naturally smart. So when people kind of like said, "Oh, you should go in this direction. You should study this. You would be good at this," I would just do it, and I'd be really good at it. And naturally, I received a lot of praise for it. But in that moment where my life kind of spiraled out of control, and I realized that the majority of my life I didn't really do what I wanted to do. I wasn't really being true to who I was on the inside. That was where I needed to change. So my goal was to, from that point on, really figure out who John Tim was and live the life that I wanted to live. And my why was very simple. It was because look where living up to my simple reputation got me. Right? It got me feeling extremely anxious, extremely depressed, to the point where my life was in danger. Right? I wanted to be somebody that was naturally happy, right? Was passionate about what I was doing on a day in and day out basis. I wanted to be somebody that was excited about life and excited about the things I was working on. So how did I want to go about making this change? Well, first off was getting intense help. Right? Being somebody who was naturally gifted in school and other activities, I never needed help with anything before in my life. Never. This was a big step for me. Simply admitting, oh, like I can't do this on my own. Like I need help. I need to go to the hospital. I need to engage in therapy. I need to take antidepressants. Like I need all these support systems in place in order for me to accomplish my goal. Another sub-goal that I needed to accomplish in order to, achieve my overarching goal of finding out who I was, right? I needed to make a career change. I needed to make lifestyle changes. And none of this stuff was easy, but I knew in the moment when I was putting this plan together in my mind on how I was going to recreate my life, I knew it would, in the process, I would really figure out who I was, right? And my when was in that moment when I was in the hospital. That's when I started. I have a whole journal full of logs that I just wrote while I was in the hospital. Just my thoughts, what I was thinking about doing when I got out, and all that. And that was the day one. And from then on, I just wake up every day telling myself, am I doing something I'm passionate about, and am I living the life that I want to live?
So how we grown? So basically, taking off from the day I got sober, April 21st, 2018, was when I started to work on myself. And now, you go through a 12-step program, and you really have to look internally at your character defects. You have to make amends with other people, and you have to go out and do the work. And so this is stuff that I was not familiar with at all. I actually had to look inward and think about who I was and change myself. And so I went through that process, and eventually I got back into Princeton. So I was suspended for a year with the opportunity to get back in through, I had to do therapy, I had to get drug tested, things like that, of that nature. Luckily I was sober, and so I was able to get back in. I started pursuing my studies again, doing better in the classroom, starting to get those habits back. But I wasn't on the football team at the time. And I knew I wanted to get back in the team. That was something I really missed. And so I was in talks with my head coach, and we were working something out very bad at the team. But going into the spring season, I wasn't quite ready to get back. I was still kind of getting acclimated to the environment of just, being somebody who cared about school, like even the slightest bit. And I remember I had a little injury, and so we were going into spring ball. It's like our spring practices, 12 intense practices, and they need somebody to film. And they asked me to do it, and I was like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it for the team. And so I went from a highly recruited athlete to all of a sudden the guy that was, 100 feet up in the air, down filming at the practice. And I wasn't like Dyson film up like my boy Bryce and Sean are doing. It wasn't like some cool videography stuff. It was literally just standing there for hours, breathing 100 degrees out. And people on the team are like, yeah, who is that dude? All right, what? I see him around at the meetings. So I was kind of at the football meetings, but I wasn't practicing. And so, that was something that my ego a year before, I would have told the coaches, no way. There's not a chance in this world that I'm going to film the practices. I don't care about getting back to the team. But luckily, I worked on myself, and I was willing to do whatever it took. And so I was filming for the team. And that summer, I stayed, worked out with the team the entire summer, got back on the team my junior. And so junior year started, and I immediately became a leader on the team. I became known as the Juice Man. And the Juice Man is the guy brings the hype to every single practice and lift. So, just getting the boys hyped up before the lift, on the practice field, and just always bringing constant energy when I was there. Like, that's really what I thrived in doing. And I didn't exactly have the fairy tale ending when I got back on the team. It would have been nice to be able to sit here and say. And so I broke all the Ivy League records, and now my plaque is up on the wall. Like, that's not how it worked out for me. My junior year, I was injured for half the year. By the time I got work back in, I was kind of in the lineup, but I wasn't quite there yet. And senior year came around, and that was when COVID-19 popped up. So, my senior year got taken away. But just the fact that I was able to work myself back on the team, get back within that community, was a huge deal for me. And so after my senior year, I graduated from Princeton. I got a job as an underwriter for a commercial insurance company in New York City. And I ended up staying home for a year. And during that year, I was able to save up a ton of money. And I ended up buying a co-op in Manhattan. And so for me, it's crazy to think about how much has changed just because of, these different lifestyle changes that I made. And so I work in finance, but, from the time I got sober to now, I've been a mentor for people, specifically high school students and college students. People come to me and say, hey, if you could really talk to this person, they're going through it, or, just be there for somebody who's, going through a similar situation. I've been doing that for a while now. I do recovery coaching with this center in Connecticut called the Lighthouse. So basically just doing light coaching stuff with people that have substance abuse issues. And so, ever since I got sober, I've been able to help other people and also just, increase the quality of my life incredibly since I started making those changes.
Right, so how I've grown. So, today, me and Luke are up here talking to all of you about our stories, going to give you guys some insight into how we were able to develop these changes. And this all really started for me as soon as I got out of the hospital. Right? When I made that promise to myself, when I set that goal of living a life that I really wanted to live, that was true to who I was on the inside, to really, crush these feelings of anxiety and depression that I was having, my identity crisis that I was going through. And the first thing I did was I left my job as a financial analyst. It was after graduation, I was working as a financial analyst for a startup, and the first thing I did when I got out of the hospital was I left my job. And I told myself that I'm starting from scratch. Right? Whatever I'd done up to this point was obviously faulty, and it was time to start over. So fortunately, I was living at home at the time, and I made this decision with my parents, and I was going to stay home and really just focus on getting myself better. And in that time is when I developed an initiative called No Man Sits Alone in Dutchess County, where I found great therapy in building Adirondack chairs. I really like working with my hands and getting into carpentry work. So the chairs became a symbol for my mission. I sold them to raise money and awareness for men's mental health, while simultaneously volunteering a lot of my time at local schools up there, sharing my story and learnings with high school students and university students all over the county. I found tremendous success in that. It grew very rapidly, but I came to a point where I wasn't ready to commit to it full time at that point, so I decided to place it on the shelf for the time being, and then reallocate my time and efforts to developing a career, figuring out what I wanted to do next with my life, trying to start a next chapter. So that's when the opportunity presented itself to move to New York with Luke. So we live together in his co-op. I rent the second bedroom from him. And right now, I am currently bartending in Manhattan, specifically in Times Square. I started as a server, and I've worked my way up to bartending, and now I actually manage the bar. So I do that as my job, and I have entrepreneurial ventures that I pursue on the side. I'm about to launch an app in New York City, and Luke and I are lining up speaking engagements and implementing programs for life coaching and helping students in schools all over the state. So that's how I got in front of you today. So the WWHW formula. If you've kind of been listening to the way that Luke and I have been speaking, we've been using this what, why, how, when structure, right? This is an instrumental formula in basically building out the path to success and achieving any one of your goals. We're going to break it down more in specifics for you, but just know that this concept is really the overarching theme of what we're trying to instill in all of you. And it's really a very easy and practical guide for not only identifying a goal, but coming up with a plan in order to achieve it.
First W, what? What is your goal? The what is your awareness. If you're not aware that there's a problem, that there's something you want to change, or some positive habit that you want to implement, you're never going to take the first step to change. And so with what, you want to start thinking about, okay, is there something in my life that is detrimental to me, right? It could be a scenario like John and I, where that's pretty extreme examples, right? Like getting sober. I don't know a lot of 19-year-olds that are getting sober. It wasn't very common. I don't think it's very common today. People that were, basically, struggling with depression, anxiety, and had to get help at, the cost of your life. Those are big what's. It could also just be something, on a more minor scale, right? Like, what are some negative habits that are pulling me back a little bit? Like my lungs don't feel great from vaping, but no, not even substance abuse related. Like just, maybe I want to become less reactive. But it could also be a movement towards something positive. Like I want to start implementing, a morning jog, a morning walk where I can clear my head every single day. So it's just starting to think about different areas that you can create change in your life, whether it, be something drastic or just something a little positive step into the right direction.
So the why, right? So now that you've become aware of something a goal you want to achieve, right? A positive change you want to make in your life. Now you got to identify your why. Your why is your purpose behind this goal. Right? Without a strong why, your motivation for waking up every day and doing what you need to do to accomplish your goal, it isn't going to be very motivating to you. Right? You need to have a significant purpose behind the goal and why you want to achieve it. Right? It needs to be something deep. It needs to be something personal to you and to you only, so that when you feel like, I don't feel like putting in the work today, I don't feel like studying for this class, I don't feel like doing the extra work for my job, right? And you remind yourself like, this is why I want to do this. And then you in that moment, you're like, all right, what I'm feeling right now, like it's all worth it in the end because I'm doing what I need to do to accomplish my goal.
So that's great. So we have the what, which is the awareness, the why, which is the purpose and the passion. But how do we get there? And so with how, we basically take the big macro level, right? The end goal, the end mission, and we want to reverse engineer and break it down into small little steps. And basically, the way you do this is just by, you keep repeatedly asking yourself how. Your goal could be, I want to make $1 million. How? And then from there, you just keep working it backwards and backwards until you get to an actionable step that you can implement today. We always want to break the goals down so that you never want to feel like, this is something that's too big, it's too much for me to do. There should always be a breakdown to where you get to a point where, okay, I can start this today. I can start this right now.
And the when. Right, so as Luke was kind of building off of in the how section, right, your when is how can I start right now? If I start right now, what's the first tangible step I can take to get closer to my goal? And in addition to that, how do I set a realistic timeline for myself to accomplish this goal? Something that's going to be that you feel is possible for your own abilities and strengths, but also something that will push you further along your journey, something that will make it a little challenging for yourself. So when you do achieve your goal, you feel really rewarded and accomplished. Okay, this structure of having a timeline, it's not only going to keep you moving along, but it's also going to help you keep yourself accountable throughout the whole process. So now that we've broken down the formula, right, we've shared our stories in the form of the WWHW formula. We've broken it down by its individual components. Now we've built out some scenarios and real life examples from our lives, being, in your shoes just a few years ago, as college students, as people that are about to go out into the real world. We've built out some scenarios and examples that could really resonate with a lot of you. So example one that applies to my story personally, but also like a lot of people have this revelation at some point in their life where they're let's say in my shoes, I was a financial analyst and I found myself really sad, really depressed, and really anxious on a day in and day out basis. Right? There was what my goal was in that time, high level, was to find a day in and day out job or activity in which I was excited to go to, in which that made me happy and it made me feel passionate about what I was doing. That was my overarching goal. And my why, it was because, I didn't want to wake up feeling like this every day. Okay? This job was, sure, I was making good money. I was doing what people thought I was supposed to be doing, like a financial analyst. Like, that sounds nice on the inside. There's a great career trajectory with that. But on the inside, I wasn't feeling the way I should, right? And I didn't want to continue down that path. I knew I wanted to be happy on a day in, day out basis. That was my why. So my how. How do I make a career change? So before anybody just impulsively quits their job, right? Like, oh, you wake up one day and you're like, I'm sick and tired of this. Like, I'm out. You need to come up with a plan first, okay? First, you need to identify some areas that you think you would be interested in pursuing in the future, right? For me, it was, entrepreneurship. It was carpentry. It was helping other people, right? These are things that in the process of recovering, I knew I liked and I was passionate about. So I knew like those were areas I could explore. So I developed a plan where I could, pursue these passions without making money, but I would also do something more fun to make money, and that was bartending for me. So I found some classes on like how to learn to bartend, and I took a week-long course in the city, getting certified as a bartender, learning how to make drinks, because I knew that with a schedule as a bartender, where now I work from 3 p.m. to midnight, 4 to 5 days a week, I knew in the mornings I had the time to focus on my health and myself, but also, network with people that I wanted to talk to, set up meetings to help other people, and really explore the realm of what I wanted to do next. Like, that was the plan I put in place for myself. And this didn't happen overnight. This took like a couple months for me to develop. But showing up every day and reaching out to a person, like, that's what it takes. Like, if there's areas in your life that you want to pursue and that you're interested in, and you're just not really feeling it in the moment, like, start like piquing your curiosity. Like, reach out to people. Like, network on LinkedIn. Like, if you know a family friend that does something that kind of sounds interesting to you, like, reach out to them. People love talking about themselves. Like, you might be afraid to reach out to that person in the moment, but when you reach out to them, they'll gladly share what it is that they're working on, why it may be of interest to you. Like, people are more than willing to give you that information. Okay? And the when was like when that day came when I was like, I can't keep going on like this. Like, I just hate feeling like this. Right? And I knew from that day forward that I wasn't going to go back there. And I told myself in that moment, made a definitive choice, I was not going to go back to that life I was living. And that's where I'm, reaching out to people, applying to jobs, doing something I never would have expected to do ever. And if somebody wrote down a list of 1,000 jobs Jonathan would be doing at 24, bartender would probably not even be on the list. Okay, but that's okay, because here I am.
Example. I want to progress in my job as fast as possible. And so once I graduated, I started my job within a couple weeks. And right then and there, I was pretty eager to get going. I'm asking people, I'm like, okay, what is it I can do to kind of set myself apart? Is there anything like extra work I can take on? Like, I want to just advance as fast as possible. And so people were telling me about these designations that you can get, called the ARM and the CBC. And these are two big designations in the insurance industry. They hold a lot of weight to themselves. And so I was like, all right, fine, I guess this is something that I want to do. So my what was getting the CBCU, getting this ARM. Why did I want to do this? Well, to start off, I found out there were some pretty good financial incentives to getting them, so that was pretty cool. But to be honest, I wanted to prove my employer, my CEO, that he made a good decision hiring me, because I was excited to be there, and I was like, I want to prove this guy right, and more so. I want to exceed his expectations. I wanted to prove to myself that, hey, I am capable of, going above and beyond other people's expectations and my own expectations. And so my how was basically saying, okay, let's take a look at this coursework. It's 10 tests that I had to take. And so basically I worked backwards. I'm like, all right, so let me just start with test number 1. Let me just start with ordering the course. So what did I do? When it was that day when I found out about these designations, I was like, all right, let me just get on it. So I went online, bought the course, and I started it that day. And so also the timeline that I set, I was like, people were saying it's supposed to take 2 to 3 years to complete. So I said, why don't I set my timeline as half the time? And if I get it done in that time, cool. Why? So I set it out for a year, and every single day I ordered my time and working out, and studying. And that was how I prioritized it. And I ended up getting it done within, I think it was a week after 7 months of starting. So just it's important to set that timeline, because it's like, all right, I have something to step forward to, and you never know. You might exceed it, or you might, it might take a little bit longer. You can always adjust it. It's always good to shoot yourself.
So another example, right, that is becoming prevalent in today's, workforce, especially among people that are graduating from college, where their academic experience may have been a little intense. They are now working, and they feel like they've never taken the second to, unwind and really settle in. And that happened to me. I found myself running this rat race of, I don't even know where I was running to, but I was just running. I was trying to accomplish and achieve and move my way up, and I didn't really know which direction I was moving up, and then I found myself lost. And I was burnt out. And I think that's a major reason why I experienced my mental health decline, was because I was simply burnt out. I really reached the maximum limit, and it was time for me to take a step back and really evaluate who I was and really take some me time. So what was my what? My what was to prioritize my health and to focus on myself, right, to recover. For other people, maybe it's just, maybe I want to take a year to find out who I am, or maybe I just want to take a year just to relax, right? Recover from really working hard from 4 years in college. There's nothing wrong with that. Your why? Because you need to because I prioritize my health. Your health should be your number one priority over anything. Your health isn't less important than making money or advancing in a career. If you're not healthy, then none of those things matter. Okay? And my how was making that drastic change of, okay, instead of going right back into the race, let me push myself to recover. Right? When I feel myself feeling the urge to start applying for jobs again, trying to put myself back into the workforce, let me put some restraints on myself. That was my how. Really holding back, basically deleting all job application apps off my phone, deleting LinkedIn, all that stuff. I needed to fully detox from this experience, because it was burning me out, and I knew I needed to remove myself from it. And the when was very similar to what I talked about before, was when you commit to it in the moment, where you're like, okay, I'm done running this rat race. It's time for me to prioritize my health. That decision, that definitive moment, it needs to be the priority. And it needs to be a moment you remember, and it sticks with you for a long period of time. And every day, the key wins were every day when I felt myself getting that urge to, get back into it. You're only wasting time. You're just coming up with excuses because whatever. Pull back the reins and make sure you remember to prioritize your health.
Example, you feel pressure to make career decisions from external sources. So John and I, we share our stories. I talk about substance abuse, he talks about mental health, and we get a lot of pats on the back when it comes to that. John, what you're doing, it's really nice. It's a great thing. Oh, Luke, sharing your story, that's so honorable. It's such a great thing. Well, what a lot of people fail to realize is we look at this as a career. This is something that we want to take. We're pretty much at the ground level right now. We just started building ourselves up, and we want to go all the way with it. And we see unlimited potential with it. But a lot of people want to put their limiting beliefs on us and say, oh, Luke, you have a great job in an industry that's always going to be there. You get paid very well. You have this high position. You're very highly touted in your company. Oh, that stuff you're doing on the side is nice, but focus on it. And I hear that noise sometimes from people around. And so my what when it comes to this is just destroy those limiting beliefs. Those people that are on the outside, they're not going to always understand what you're going through, what you're thinking. People are going to try to bring you down and tell you that you can't do things. Screw that. Destroy it. And why do I think, I should destroy that belief? I think I should destroy that belief because I know what I want to do. I know I want to help people when it comes to sobriety, substance use. I know I want to help people just make positive change in their life. I know I want to just make connections with other people, for a living. That seems like a pretty awesome job. And so that's just something that I know is going to bring out purpose and passion. How? So, how are we going to do this? How are we going to destroy these limiting beliefs? Something that John and I are really into is this thing called references. We're going to go into this in a little bit, but references are essentially people that you look up to, who come before you, who are kind of set the pathway that you're maybe trying to explore, done something similar. And so a way for me in the beginning when people were telling me, this is something that I can't do, people still tell me now that it's something that I shouldn't try to pursue full time, is I look to people that are in a similar space that have done this similar thing before me. And so I look at these references and I basically say, okay, this person has done X, Y, and Z and they've gotten to this place. Why can't I do that? There shouldn't be a reason that somebody else did this thing and I can't do it myself. And so basically I just try to ride on their coattails and figure out what's their process is, what different steps they take to get where they are, and just learn more about that and try to implement those things in my life. And when should you do it? Tomorrow. Just kidding. We always use that moment, that momentum to start in the day, right there at that moment.
So this is like the goal I'm probably working on most actively in the moment, right? And for anybody starting their career, I think it should be a priority of building a really valuable network. And personally for me, I want to become a leader in the industry. So what's the goal? To really put myself out there, to build a massive network, and to build myself up to the point where I'm up there with these guys that I'm admiring and I'm contributing to the industry of mental wellness and entrepreneurship and lifestyle. Why? Why? Because I found purpose in helping others. I found purpose in pursuing my passion. And I found a lot of purpose with taking my experiences and my story and sharing it with other people to hopefully serve as a reference for others. Right? I would love to wake up one day when I'm 80 years old and be able to look back on my life and say, you know what? I really went for it. And because I went for it, I was able to show other people how to go for it as well. Right? I feel like I can look back on that life and be proud of it. Right? I can be happy that I did it. So how do you build this network? Right? For me, it's all like very KPI driven, very metric driven. I'm going to reach out to 10 people on LinkedIn this week. For schools that we're trying to talk to, I'm going to send 20 emails this week. I'm going to call 20 schools this week. Right? I'm going to reach out to 5 industry people in the education consultancy field who are superintendents of schools, who academic advisors of all those sorts. Right? I'm going to reach out to these people and put myself out there. Now, personally, you don't get a lot of responses all the time. You're like, oh, this guy's trying to sell me something, whatever. He's just some kid. But all it takes is one person to reach back to you out of 1,000, right? And that one connection can open a whole nother door of opportunities for you. If you've ever heard of the law of like the 6 degrees of separation, where you know more than 6 people away and more than 6 steps away from anybody else in the world, use that to your advantage. Because if you put yourself out there and you try to open these doors and form these one-to-one connections, people will connect you with others and your network will expand rapidly. When Luke and I made the decision to really commit to this and really try to make this something we do full time, in just like a few weeks of really putting ourselves out there, the people we've met, the things we've learned, just the awareness we've grown to have in the industry of being education consultants, of being life coaches, of being people that want to work in schools, has grown exponentially. It's far surpassed anything we conceived as possible before. Right? So then that goes to the when, right? And that's kind of back to where I was talking about in the how. Like every day, telling myself, I'm going to reach out to this many people. I'm going to reach out to this person. And when I feel myself like, maybe I'll do it tomorrow, or I'm a little anxious to put myself out there, like, no. You got to squash that. If you look at my bedroom, I have a whole wall of Post-it notes of just motivational sayings, quotes, and everything. And when I feel myself a little out of it, I just stare at that wall and I start reading. And it automatically puts me right back into the right mindset. Like, I got to take these steps right now so that for our goal personally, by September, we're working on premise as life coaches for three different school districts. And we have this whole curriculum built out for the entire school year of 2023 to 2024.
Finding the balance between financial success and pursue of passion. So, a lot of people talk about money. Oh, money is the root of all evil. Well, I tend to disagree with that. So, my what? What I want to do is I want to find a balance between financial success and pursuit of passion. That's pretty much right out there. Now, why? Why do I want financial success? Well, let's be honest. With money, you can do some pretty cool things. You know, I want to be able to take care of myself. I want to be able to take care of my family when I have a family and decide it's time for me to start a family. My parents, who've done so much for me, I love to help them out. And of course, you know, there's expenses that are just lifestyle costs, like going out to eat, going and traveling, seeing new cultures, maybe getting, you know, a new tattoo or two, you know, which I've tried to slow down a little bit of. But, you know, there's expenses like that where, you know, the money is going to help. And great, I mean, we need it for some things. But also, on the other end of the spectrum, there's this pursuit of passion. And so, how are we going to get there? And why is that important? It's important because I know that this passion is going to lead me to a life of purpose. Instead of waking up, rolling out of bed, and being like, oh, I have to go all the day, it's going to lead me to wanting to go and conquer. And I know it sounds cliche, but when you really find your thing, I'm telling you, it actually gets you excited and going. Like when John and I pepper this stuff, you know, some of you might think, oh, it would be boring to sit there for 8 hours and, you know, go over presentation, but like, it's time that I enjoy and I love to do. So like, that's the type of stuff I want to invest myself into every single day. How? So basically, what we have to do is, okay, financially, what do we need? So almost like a balance sheet. What are our expenses? And so I have a mortgage. I have to eat. I have utilities. I have those lifestyle costs within a reasonable needs. You know what I mean? There's been times where I spent a little bit too much money. Got to tone it back. So basically, taking all the expenses and then on the other end of the spectrum saying, okay, what type of services do I need to provide in order to pay for those expenses and a little bit more? And so basically, how many speeches do John and I need to have booked out for the next coming year? How many programs do we need to have in place in these schools in order so that we can have enough platforms so that we can fund our expenses and also, you know, have a little bit of income to invest back in the business just for basic lifestyle costs. And when did we do this? When did we come up with this formula? It was as soon as we were like, you know what, this is something we really want to do full time. All right, let's figure it out. Like, once we know the number, once we get that number, then we know we can go full on and take it all the full course.
So now it's your guys' turn.
Alrighty, so I'm sure some of you guys have phones. Maybe one or two. You all do?
I told them I was told to put it away, but today you guys can take it out right
The
now.
one day you guys get to take them out. I know you never take your phones out during class, so
Yeah.
appreciate it, guys.
If anybody, yeah, hold on real quick. If anybody doesn't have a phone or doesn't want to use it and rather use a piece of paper instead, I have those printed out as well.
Fill out your information quick. An email, school email, personal email works. Your name and a phone number. And the reason why we ask for this information is because after we all go through this together, this is something that we're going to send back to you. We're going to make a nice little phone background wallpaper, you know, if you want to use it. Something that you always have at your disposal. You'll always be able to remember this moment where you decided to create some change, or, you know, this might not be your moment, but you can always take these steps with you wherever you go. So that's why we ask for your information, just so we can, after this, we're going to go back, create this background, and 30 seconds to go work on that. All right, so the first step. Could somebody read the first step?
This is where you identify your goals. What do you want to achieve? What goals do you have for this month, this year, a decade from now? What do you want for life?
Yeah. And so, guys, we know this is a very loaded question, so I don't expect all of you to have the perfect goal that you have to set right now. But, you know, we just think of something that, like we're saying, think about different timelines. You know, it could be all the way out to 25 years from now. Where do I want to be as a family man? Or as a wife or a husband? Or where do I want to be the next year from now with my studies? Can I get a volunteer for the second one? Going once. Going twice.
Hey.
Hey, thank you. What's your name? Tim. Thank you, Tim. Can you read the blog from it?
What is your fuel for achieving your goals? What is the purpose for wanting this goal? What is going to drive you every day to achieve it? Is it a passion to serve others? Is it a quest to provide the best life for your family, your partner, to get the most out of your life? Why do you really want this goal?
Thank you, Tim. So you guys look up here at John and I, and you might be thinking, okay, these guys, they want to serve all these people, and what we're doing, yeah, it might be a great thing, but your why doesn't have to be, I have to go help all these other people, right? Like, don't look at our examples and think, okay, what they're doing is, it has to be all mission driven, serving other people, right? Like, just think about different things that can motivate you. What is going to take you, on a day when you're just not feeling like getting up out of bed and you want to sit there and you don't want to go out and do anything? What is something that you can think about and all of a sudden like, all right, that is a good reason for me to just put my feet on the floor and start moving. It really doesn't have to be, the deepest thing, but of course, the more it gets to your core, the more that it's probably going to resonate with you in those tough moments. So just kind of think on that for a minute and go through. How was that good? Alrighty, we'll move on to the next one. How? Can I get another volunteer?
Juliana?
This is your plan/process. How are you going to achieve this goal? What are the steps that you have to take to accomplish your goal? What is the first actionable thing that you need to do to get closer to it? Action by action, how will you get there? Break this down to the smallest level possible. Every time you answer how, ask yourself how you can make it even smaller.
So, your what? Your what could be to make $1 million. I have no problem with money goals, anything like that. But it's like, okay, how am I going to make $1 million? Well, let's say for my example, I'm going to be an insurance broker who has a book of business who makes $1 million a year. All right, well, how are you going to be an insurance broker that has a book that makes $1 million a year? Well, I'm going to, be a producer who starts to work with B-level clients and starts to undertake somebody else's book. All right, well, how am I going to be somebody who works with B-level clients and starts to undertake somebody else's book? Well, I'm going to become an account manager who works underneath somebody who has those B-level clients and start to understand how these contractors work. Well, how are you going to work underneath that person and become an account manager? Well, I'm going to start at the data level. Oh, how am I going to get started at that level? Well, I'm going to start networking. So you see, you can just keep breaking it down. And eventually you want to get to a point where you start with some actual step that you can get done, in the moment, something that you could take on at any time. So we'll give you a little bit more time to think about that. Okay, and for the final goal, when? So set a date for when you want to accomplish this goal. Take some action towards this goal today. Make it your top priority. Put it first. Don't tell yourself next week, next month, or even tomorrow. Take some steps towards your goal today while you have this at the forefront of your mind. Do not let the pressing things of life distract you from what you really want to do. To be the best version of you and live the life of your dream. So whenever you want to make a change in your life, you should always use that moment and use it as momentum, because it's very easy to get distracted in life. I mean, there's a million things going on. You have school, you've got, hanging out with your friends, going to parties, going to see your family, figuring out a new job, all these different things. And when you finally decide I want to make some change in your life, you push it off to, tomorrow or next week. It's very easy to kind of just let it go. And it's just a thought that drifted into the past. So we appreciate you guys going through the steps with us. We hope you get something out of that. So we're going to continue on.
Luke and I have touched on you've heard us say the word reference a couple of times. Basically, you probably guys use it for school if you're writing a paper or something, like your references, like you're cited, like where did you extract information from to, incorporate into your own argument. Well, references play a huge role in this type of goal development, right? Because as people, right, our minds are the product of what we've put into it over the course of our entire life, right? And if you don't expand what you put into your mind, right, if you're not open to, listening to people talk or watching informative pieces of media or whatever it is, what you conceive as possible will never even pop into your mind, right? It's very hard for you to have an original thought, a very original imagination and creative idea. A lot of your thoughts and your strategies are spurred from what you intake, what you read, what you digest mentally. So for references, whether it's podcasts, following people on, like, for us, it's like people in the wellness industry, like following these people on social media, limiting like the negative inputs in our life, like watching the news or, engaging in the toxic aspects of social media. Like these references that we're going to show you some of ours in a moment, but these references are instrumental, right? For Luke and I, like for even just like building this platform for what we're here talking to you guys about today, a lot of the things we talk about and the way we do it, the way we're structuring the business, like everything has been influenced by other people that have already kind of paved the way for this type of work. And it's not like you have to take one person and follow their life step by step. But let's say you're going through a problem and you find some people that are they're openly talking about a problem that you really resonate with, whether it's mental health or just family struggles or whatever it is, or struggling to like get into shape or whatever it is, right? You like really resonate with what this person's saying. Like, hey, like I really identify, like this person feels like they're telling my story. Okay, and see what they say, see how they got out of it, and kind of keep an open mind to what they're offering. And this will not only like it'll open your eyes to what you think is possible, like the avenues you can take into accomplishing your goal, and it'll just broaden your awareness of the topic in general. You'll become more knowledgeable, and in the process, like you're just gonna become a better person. So now we're gonna show you some of the references in our everyday life. So personally for me, like some of my big ones on here, here's like 20 names. I know the screen might be a little small. We can send you guys names, but like for me, like Lewis Howes, he's the host of this podcast called School Greatness. He hosts a wide variety of people in various industries who essentially talk about their stories, how they've overcome adversity, how they're having an impact, how they're living a life of greatness. That's the theme of the podcast. Another big one, Joe Dispenza. He's huge in the mental health field. He's very big into the field of quantum physics, where basically like energy is all around us. If we emit positive energy, we attract positive energy, the law of attraction, all those type of philosophies. Another big one is Rob Dyrdek. I know you guys probably know him as the guy in Ridiculousness that has all those like funny clips of people like, skateboarding and like falling, all this type of stuff. But he's actually one of the most time-regimented, financially regimented people I've ever listened to. The way he goes about his business is genius, and he's like at the forefront of like this type of movement of prioritizing your time and prioritizing your energy. What he's working on is brilliant, and he's very open about sharing on other people's podcasts and other platforms too.
My man David Goggins. Some of you might know David Goggins. You might not like him. You might like him, but he's the guy on Instagram who's like jogging. He's like, yeah, the SOP inside you, it's making you all lazy. But he like kind of just screams at the camera. Like, yeah, I actually like really like that stuff at first because I was just getting into fitness and that type of stuff. I was like, all right, like, maybe I should just not be lazy and I should just at least start getting myself to move. Like this guy's running 100 miles with a broken back, collarbone, and neck because he's like every time he does something, he breaks another thing for well. But why can't I? So that was like my first reference. My next one, my girl Kendra Scott. Kendra Scott is an entrepreneur. She started a hat business when she was 19 years old. Did that for 5 years, and that totally went to the ground. Fully failed. She got back on her feet and she started her own company called Kendra Scott. It was a custom jewelry company. And if you notice, I got a couple nice accessories. I got a nice little ring right here. I'm gonna cross right here at the watch, but I got this ring right here from Kendra Scott because I heard her story. I was really inspired by it. I was like, all right, I'm gonna treat myself. I'm gonna get something. I went to her store, got this, but she started a custom jewelry store where she was making one-off pieces of jewelry. Very time-consuming thing to do. And she's now built her company, Kendra Scott, into an $800 million. Well, her net value is $800 million to over a $1 billion valuation for her company. And my last person, we don't want to talk about last. My guy Alex Hormozy. If you're looking to get into finance and entrepreneurship, Alex Hormozy is somebody who has, he quit his job as a consultant. He got started opening gyms. He opened 6 very successful gyms in LA. Actually ended up losing all those gyms just due to just working with bad people and bad terms and conditions on his sales. But then he eventually started this gym platform that it was a software and service that helped take gyms that were not doing so well and creating more revenue. And he eventually sold that for like $50 million. And now he started his own private equity company. And now he invests in small time, more towards businesses towards education. But he's just a cool dude to follow. Like, he's putting out content constantly on a daily basis, and it's somebody that I look towards. And I'm like, okay, I aspire to put content out like him, but also just to go out in life and try to, chase after all these things. And he always providing good frames of reference.
Oh, this is good stuff right here. We should have brought out the Spider-Man suits today. You guys are like, what is wrong with these dudes up here?
Can we all thank him?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just something we do as we go out on the streets now. We
Wait,
work
is that
out with
really
the.
Yeah.
That's how it is. So our motto is extreme results require extreme action. So like I was like,
Okay.
dude, why don't we just go out and work out on the street? So we started working out in the middle of New York City on the street doing pull-ups and stuff.
We introduced like Touch Streets like as the handle, but like what is it? Like it's our company, it's the name of what we're doing, but the philosophy that we're operating under, we don't really identify as a normal for-profit company, or we're not a non-profit. Like we identify more as a mission initiative to help, create positive change in the world by helping individuals create positive change in their own individual lives. We think it has a compounding effect, and it's like the root of what we're trying to accomplish.
We create Touch Streets because John and I were pushed to moments in our lives where change was necessary. We implemented many changes in our lives and found purpose and fulfillment helping others do so.
How did Touch Streets succeed? You notice that's in the past tense. So a big thing Luke and I do psychologically is we talk about the things we've accomplished or we want to accomplish in the past tense. So our mind is programmed to think that we've already done it, that we've been there and done that, we've walked the walk already. So we're mentally primed to come into like an event like this talk today and like this morning be like, oh Luke, remember when we killed that talk today?
Here we go. That speech we did at Pace today. You were looking good. You killed it, man.
So we do that on a regular basis, basically manifesting it out into the universe, getting that positive energy, giving it out. It just mentally primes us. So we were going to succeed by doing talks like this at schools, by implementing on-premise life coaching programs at high schools and colleges, hopefully eventually across the country. We're going to be, we help people on the sidewalks of New York City. Like we're dressed up as Spider-Man, but the root of it is when people come up to it, we ask them like, what is your superpower, right? What is the thing that makes you one of one? What's your greatest strength? And how can you use that to help other people? And that's what we ask them. And eventually one day our goal is to open up our own like proprietary original like elevation centers, we want to call them. Essentially recovery centers, but less focused on, getting you back to where you were and more focused on making you become a person you never thought was imaginable before. So yeah, kind of recapping, like how can you find us? This is Touch Streets. We're on Instagram and TikTok and all that. We're constantly posting Spider-Man content. Like that's like the major content right now. These are our individual pages. We're also on LinkedIn. We have our website, www.touchstreets.com. You can read more about us, kind of check out our services. And then there's an email if you ever want to reach out.
Very much. We appreciate you for having us. Seriously. Take care, all right? If you ever need anything, let me know, all right?
Thank you.
Of course. The door is always open. Whatever. Thank you so much.